we were all in a meeting in the morning, one of those right to know, like they tell you all about your rights for sexual harassment and for all, all that kind of stuff that you just have to do. And everyone's beepers started going off and people started mumbling, and we had heard that a plane had hit the South Tower, the North Tower. Which one was hit first? No, I'm not going to remember. Anyway, that a plane had hit one of the towers. So we all just sort of left the meeting and were milling about. And we had been told initially that it was like a small prop plane, that it, was probably an accident. And then we heard that a second plane hit, and I think everyone kind of realized that's not a coincidence. So after the second plane hit, after the second tower was hit, we have a group at our office called the Medical Examiner's Scientific Assessment and Training Team, and I was part of that. And so a number of us were going down to the scene to just kind of assess what was going on. We knew there would be dead bodies that eventually we would have to deal with, and we had heard people were jumping out of the building, and so a small group of us went down there. And I remember on the drive down thinking, what if there's a bomb on the plane? Like, what if we get down there and something explodes? And I was kind of questioning going down there, but I also, it's an exciting job going to scenes and stuff like that. So anyway, so we got down there, and we parked on Vesey Street, and we got out of the car and we were walking kind of towards the Marriott Hotel, which is where we were going to meet two of our other colleagues who were going down in a separate car. And the first thing I really keyed in on were people who were jumping out of the building. And that, they weren't, people always ask, like, were they trying to commit suicide or something? They weren't. They were fleeing from the heat because the fire was so intense. They didn't really have a choice. And heard them land, which is probably the worst sound in the world. And I just started to dry heave, like throw up. And my colleague said, if you want to go back to the car, you can sit in the car. You don't have to do this. And I said no, and I went with them, which ultimately was the right decision because our car got crushed by a steel beam when the tower came down. So we were standing on the corner, we were kind of in front of the Marriott, and we were deciding something that I can no longer remember. There's a lot of blank spots. And we decided something, and then we started walking down the street. And as we were walking, my friend Brian said, oh my God, the building's coming down. And I turned around right at the moment, and it's captured on TV, like where the top just kind of looks like it mushrooms out. And I saw that, and I just started to run. And ironically, I was still wearing my sneakers because I had been late to work that day, and I hadn't had time to change into my work shoes. So I was lucky I was still wearing my sneakers, and I just started running, and I turned around, and I saw that like black tidal wave of debris coming at me, and there's just this tremendous roar. The sound was deafening. And I saw in front of me, I was running towards World Financial One, and there's like steps that go up, and there's a wall. And I was just running towards World Financial One. I thought maybe I could get in the building. But that tidal wave just kind of picked me up and blew me into a wall, like into a corner. My husband and I had actually recently gotten married. And when we got engaged, we were climbing Mount Rainier. And because he used to be a guide. And before we could climb Mount Rainier, he made me do avalanche training. And I just kept hearing him in my head saying, get an airspace and protect your head. So I put my arms on the wall. At first I pulled my jacket over my head, which is one of those big scene jackets, and it's like Kevlar. I pulled it over my head and I just braced my arms against the wall because the force was so tremendous. I mean, it flipped fire trucks, it tore the stone facade off buildings. It was really powerful right where we were. And I was just being pelted and kind of buried with all this stuff, but I had an airspace and I had that over my head. And I was lucky I did that because my friend who didn't have anything over his head, his skull got cracked open from the debris. And then it stopped and it was pitch black because we were in the middle of that cloud. And there was just like this strange muted silence, and then lots of beeping, and it was car alarms, and firemen have alarms on their air tanks. If they lay down too long, an alarm goes off. It means they're not moving. And there were just beeps everywhere, and it was pitch black, and I just started throwing up because all of that concrete had just been forced down my throat. I was covered by debris, but I wasn't like under feet. I could get out easily myself. And I said out loud, I'm alive. Is anybody out there? Like, it was kind of like what you see in the movies that people do, but I really did it, and it just seemed odd. And I knew where I was because I had seen where I was about to land when I was getting blown, and I walked up the steps and I felt my way to the building, and I found a colleague of mine, and we went inside the building, and we went out the back because the back is sort of near the water, and I had a concussion, and my friend Brian's head was split open, and so we got over to the Jersey side, and we were just sitting there, just like, you know, throwing up and crying, and people were pushing us up and calling family for us, and we were just staring at, there was just one tower left, and it was so surreal, and then it just crumbled in front of us. And
did you realize that the second one was going to come down?
No. I didn't even realize that the first one was really coming down. I still kind of thought it was like a bomb exploding. I didn't realize that it was the whole building coming down. I mean, when I looked at it and it was gone, I just couldn't believe it was gone. I mean, you know, it's a 100-story building. I mean, you know, it's the icon of New York. Like, and every time I drove in, I knew where I was because I saw them. Every time I got out of the subway, I could figure out which way I was facing because of those towers. And when there was one, it was so strange. And then when there were none, we couldn't get out. No one could pick us up, and we couldn't leave. And around midnight, I had a friend at work whose husband works for the Secret Service. So he badged his way in and then drove us all home. My husband, my parents met me at a hotel along the way and took me home, and I took a shower because I was covered in fiberglass, and I couldn't even undress myself. I was so bruised from head to toe. And I tried to lay down and go to sleep, but I couldn't. All I did was cry. I couldn't lay down because I had these cracked ribs. They hurt. I couldn't lay on my back. And I had a welt on my forehead that was like the size of half a peach, so I couldn't lay on my tummy because it just would like fill up with blood. And so I just sat up and cried all night.